welcome. We've had a few little and I'll edit all of that out anyway. But welcome. I'm talking to the great Lex Scott, Black Lives Matter. I kind of wanted to get an update of where you guys are. Are you sensing that you're making some change and impact? I know we get a lot of the yippity yappy back and forth, and you have to sit back and see, well, let's look what tomorrow is and if something has changed. And as we talk about policy, we know that that boils down to, oh, we've got to put it in legislation. We got to write this. We got to do that. Do you feel like you're making headway with the things that's important? And I would imagine you can outline the most significant aspects of it. Uh, I'm looking at things at blacks in prison who are aging, what's happening to them, what's happening to our black aging population, what are they going to do, how do they survive, and all of that. And a lot of what you're doing is going to have ramifications on the black population, period. You know, and everybody talks and like snap your finger and that's going to change. And waited 300 years or whatever for something to happen. And this is not new stuff. So where do you feel you're at right now? You're in an interesting community, and I know I've laid out 12 questions in one, but you're in an interesting community that's blinded by faith and understanding and all of those kinds of things. And you've got to weed through that. Where do you think Black Lives stands today in this community?
Well, I feel like um what's a good analogy? What's a good analogy where I'm walking up a hill and a flood is coming down and I'm trying to get to the top of the hill. And I might make it a few feet and then I get knocked back 5 feet and then I might make it a few feet. I feel like, you know, we have to have the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed in Washington. And to
Right.
get that passed, we have to pick up at least 2 more Senate seats to get that. We were hoping that we could get that passed right now in the Senate. However, it's not their focus, it's not their priority, and we don't have the votes for that. And that's my number one goal because, every Black person living in Utah has family members outside of Utah.
Correct.
Uh, all of us we have Black family members outside of Utah. So my work doesn't just focus on Utah. Let's pretend I reform all the police departments in Utah. So what?
No, exactly.
Who cares? What about my dad? What about my brother? What
Exactly.
about my cousins? So my number one focus is nationwide legislation, and we don't have the votes for it right now. However, I do like to remind people that the 1964 Civil Rights Act passed with a Republican Congress during the 60s,
Correct.
right? So if they could pass that during the 60s and they could get the votes during the 60s, why can't we get the votes in 2021?
I think a lot of the issue today is not so much in the 60s, we had a different kind of mentality. We had sort of more of an intellectual mentality. I don't like that. I'm not familiar with that. Today, we've got more of an economical impact. It is businesses. It is the idea that I have financial control, financial power that is limiting how those underserved communities get into the system. We talk about the low income communities, and yet everything in those communities have been removed. There are no banks, there are no businesses, there are no shops, there are no cleaners. There's nothing left in those communities to drive sustainability in those communities. And so you go, I wonder why they're doing bad. You know, I could get a job when I was growing up where I live. You know, those kids who are growing up in those communities now can't get a job. You know, so it's a wealth of things that you're faced with, and I really applaud you because I see you with a smile on your face. God only knows I'd like to be around you at night when you're crying, because it's a task. It, and you got to do this and maintain a friendship. You got to do this and maintain an alliance with the people you hoping will make adaptations. Changes is a big word, but making adaptations, and those adaptations you're having to bring. And I like the idea with the fact that it's not just a fight here, it's not just a movement here, it's a movement across the country and literally across the globe.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, how do you feel?
Feel about the movement, or
Yes,
how do I feel
yeah,
about what?
about the movement.
Well, we shouldn't have to have one. I'm very resentful of the movement. I think that Hollywood paints civil rights as this romantic thing that is easy to achieve, and everyone gets a warm, funny, fuzzy feeling after you achieve that thing. But civil rights is a fight every day. It's a struggle. It's traumatic. It's innocent people going to prison. Um, it's injustice every day. So how do I feel about the movement? I wish it was over. I wish we could have police reform and prison reform, and we could live happy lives. No one, I hope there's no one out there that hopes this movement goes on forever. I don't, I would love for, to live a life where I knew Black people were safer and we had police reforms in place to protect them, and to protect our rights. And I definitely wish that we had those changes, but we don't.
Right.
And and every time we go steps forward, we go 3 steps back. We get Derek Chauvin convicted
Right.
of murder, and an hour later police kill someone.
Right.
So it's just a wake-up call that, yeah, you can get one police officer convicted of murder, and we throw parties in the streets, and that should tell you, hey, this is how little justice we get.
Right.
When we get a taste of justice, we're in the streets. People brought me these are non-alcoholic apple champagnes. Right. They brought me a whole bunch of these things when Derek Chauvin was found guilty. That's how much we are celebrating a little taste of justice, and that's one police officer.
Correct. And so we've got to learn. Well, we've got to learn to button up and take a check at the reality of it all and look for bigger things. And part of it is, how do we educate our children? The other part of it is, how do we educate the system? And I was talking. You correct me if I was wrong. I told somebody. I said, to ask the police officers to be weary of what they do, I think we need to make sure the chiefs and the heads of law enforcement start saying to their police officers, you don't do that. And the more we get it coming from the top down to the bottom, the more we're going to see a change in the attitudes and what they do. Because they do things, in my sense of understanding, that the the top is saying that's not a good thing to do. Well, have you told them that? Is that part of your message? And I think that's going to have to be a big push as well.
Yeah. And with our chief of police in Salt Lake City, Mike Brown,
yes,
he's one of the chiefs that said he wanted to implement police reform and less than lethal policies and make all these changes. And what happened was 30 of his police officers quit their job. Okay.
Really?
And then, oh, yes. And then now more police officers are quitting. So many police officers are quitting and retiring that they cannot recruit new police officers fast enough. And so that sends a message that if you are a chief of police and you do call for police reform, the police officers will quit in mass. And the deputy chief of police told me, hey, if they can't handle being held to these standards, they can go. They can go.
Right.
We're not gonna, the police chief is not there to placate the officers. And I agree. If we tell you to put checks and balances in place so that you are held more accountable for your actions and you can't handle it, then you don't need to be a police officer.
Absolutely.
Anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely. And here's where recruiting comes into play. We've got to get more young people into law enforcement, and we've got to get them educated to understand what that means. And that, you're not persecuting an individual because of their ethnicity. You're persecuting, or you're at least getting them to uphold the law more than you're looking for them because they're Black or they're Hispanic or Asian or whatever the case might be. So you've got a job
Yes.
ahead of you, my sister. Speaking of which, Betty Sawyer told me to tell you hello.
Oh, good. I love that. Are you up in Ogden?
No, I'm in Salt Lake City. I've got a podcast
Oh,
studio
okay.
on 33rd South, and usually I would invite you in. The next time I will invite you into the studio. Um, you can see a little bit. I've got 3 chairs behind me, and I've got a tech guy that usually operates my stuff so that I don't have to do it. And today I had to kind of adapt and do it. Not as good as I should have, but we finally got here. But I do have a studio, and we're building a bigger facility so we can do a lot of it. And in August, I'm producing 3 new episodes that will go into broadcast both locally and nationally.
That's cool.
So,
Congratulations.
well, thank you. We're trying to make a difference and trying to have a voice and really talk to the issue. So I would hope that I have a chance to really engage with you and talk about it. And if there's things that you need me to talk about, because maybe there's some other voice you need around the block, please call on me, and I'd be more than happy to facilitate, help in any way I can.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm going to let you go. I know you're a busy lady, and God bless you, and I thank you very much for your work. Keep it up. And remember, I'm James Brown, living and aging with pride.
All right, you take care of yourself, and I'll
All right.
talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Bye-bye.